Hi again, Panther fans, and welcome to the Panther Insider Podcast driven by Ford. This is Dave Cohen, the radio voice of the Panthers, and this week on the podcast we're talking academics and student athletes here at Georgia State. Been a lot of success over the recent years. It was recently announced that Georgia State led the Sun Belt Conference with an athletic department average GPA of 3.34 during the 2021-22 academic year, with nearly 200 Georgia State student athletes across 14 sports earning academic honors. And we're going to learn about the process that has fostered that success here at Georgia State. Before we get to our first guest on the podcast this week, we want to thank all of our Georgia State fans who have subscribed, rated, and reviewed our first 109 shows. If you've missed any of the previous podcasts, they're all available on the Apple Archives page. You can access that by visiting online at georgiastatesports.com. Well, there's an entire team providing academic support to Georgia State athletes throughout the year, and leading that effort is our first guest on the Panther Insider Podcast driven by Ford, and that is Brad Horton. Brad is the Senior Associate Athletic Director, Academics and Student Athlete Development. Brad, welcome to the Panther Insider Podcast. Congratulations on those numbers leading the Sun Belt. I know a lot of hard work and probably sleepless nights go into that process, doesn't it?
Yes, most definitely. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Panther family. Dave, I thank you for giving me this opportunity. For me, and what we strive to do is not only educate our student athletes, but transition them to life after sports. A major focus is not just the academics, the daily grind that goes into it, but also the transition from here to a career and to a lifestyle to better them, for their future. So we've been excited, for what we've accomplished. Being the top school in the Sun Belt is a huge achievement. I have a lot of colleagues in this business that have reached out and said congratulations, but I also want to thank everyone that's involved in that process, and we'll talk through that as we go through this interview.
You and I were talking, and when you look across the landscape of college athletics, both at the Power Five, the Group of Five, Division II, Division III, NAIA, academic support has come such a long way over the years. You and I were talking. I remember when I got to Georgia State in 1982, there really was no academic support program for athletes. Whoever the third or volunteer assistant men's basketball coach, for example, that was on staff, they would be the one to make sure that the players were scheduled for classes, whether or not it was going towards their major or not. There was no rhyme or reason. I assume that it was all done, to lead the student towards a graduation and a degree. But you think back about how far academic support across the landscape of athletics has come, let's say in the last 25 to 40 years.
Yeah, most definitely. I remember my time back at Mississippi State when I was a student athlete. We had two advisors. It was Ann Carr, who was still at Mississippi State as the SWA, and then Brittany Wagner, who was on the Last Chance U episode. That was my two advisors, and that was your caseload. And a lot of support came from coaches. A lot of support came from, the institution, which is still involved. But, it's amazing to see where we are now. Charlie Cobb, our athletic director, has, implemented a phenomenal strategy for us and a plan to allow the resources to be aligned, for our success. We're now, when I started here 10 years ago, we had 4 advisors. And now, we're at 7, and almost 8 advisors on our staff that are dedicated to the daily, success of our student athletes, along with our coaches and our sport administrators. So we have a phenomenal support system to be able to do what we do. And I can't say, it's just my leadership, it's just my hard work. It's a multitude of individuals that we work with to make sure that our student athletes are successful.
Across campus, let's say it here at Georgia State, whether you're a student athlete or not, there are academic support services. It may not be quite as structured. I'm sure that it probably is. It is as it is over here in athletics. But, whereas a regular, we'll call them a regular student, a non-student athlete, student at Georgia State, they work, they go to school, they may or may not have a family, but they don't have the kind of schedule. As you said, you were a student athlete. You played football at Mississippi State. You know what it's like to live with a student athlete schedule, and trying to cram academic support in there sometimes can be a challenge.
Yeah, it's balance. It's a lifestyle. I tell our staff, which I commend them every day. And it starts at 7, 8 in the morning when you say, okay, what time are we doing study hall? What time are we doing, the one-on-one meetings? What time are they going to have the meetings with the coaches to correct student athletes that, are not doing the right thing, but also, the time to, congratulate student athletes with their coaches in the building to say they're doing phenomenal. How do we continue this success? So it goes from everything from weekly, looking at, that schedule, and we, update it on a weekly basis where we look at, okay, what are their game times? What are their practice times? What time are they going to eat? And then you build academics around that to say, okay, you also have to have these additional, 2 to 3 hours a day to make sure that you're successful in every class outside of you going to class, the hybrid classes, the online, lecture-based classes. We're looking at that entire piece every week and saying, okay, how do we dedicate, your time for your success, but also the time of the staff to make sure that we get everything done that we need to get done.
Talk a little bit about your staff. Some I'm familiar with more than others, and you talk about, setting a schedule each week, and it's not just for home games, for example, and I've known her a number of years now because she travels with us with men's basketball, Jessica Summy. I mean, she's doing her job. She's running study halls. She's making sure that the men's basketball players at Georgia State, whether they're playing at home or whether we're somewhere on the road in the Sun Belt, making sure that they are keeping up with things academically as much as they are on the court.
Most definitely. You start with, Jessica Summy that has men's basketball, court volleyball, beach volleyball at the sports arena. You go over to Bree Hicken that's at, 188 MLK. That's our soccer facility. She has men's, women's soccer. Then you transition over to Center Park Stadium. You have John Spicer, who's working with football, women's track and field, cross country. You have Whitney Vicente that works with football and baseball. You have Valana Wiltz that works with football, women's basketball, and also oversees our learning specialists and some other programming that's around educational services and testing. You have Michael Bewley, who works with men's, women's tennis, men's, women's golf. And then you have Krista Moody that works with softball, and then you have myself that oversees our entire operations. So again, all those individuals are critical, to our success. And every sport is different. Like Dave said, you have, where Jess Summy is traveling in spring, with men's basketball doing study hall on the road, the testing, the making sure our student athletes are getting everything done, while they're traveling in that hectic schedule. And then you go to our fall sports where a lot of these, teams are here for home games, away for, away games, and that structure is different, on a weekly basis. But the dedication of every, person on that staff is critical to our success. And, one of the big things that we talk about, with our staff and with our student athletes is the communication with coaches. Every last one of those staff members are in communication with our coaches daily to make sure they understand what's going on and transitioning that process of the communication of what we need to get done, what's being done, what we're successful at, what we're not successful at, and making changes, as we go along.
Just out of curiosity, having been someone, and I'm talking about you, who's walked the walk and talked the talk as a former student athlete, a football player at Mississippi State, as you think back to those days, number one, what kind of a student athlete were you, and how do you, when you think back to the process, what it was when you were in school, how was that different from what you work in now that you're running an academic support service?
I would say, the major part was it was not as many hands and when I was a student athlete. So, it was a lot of accountability on advising staff of two to make sure the coaches knew what was going on, and then the student athlete had to, perform. For me, I was very passionate about getting a college degree. I was the first generation student athlete, first generation student to even go to college to be on athletic scholarship. So that was big, for me. Well, as in today's landscape, there's so many hands that can touch. I'll say this: Dave Weiss, Carol Coleman is a huge supporter. Allison Calhoun Brown are huge supporters of my success and what we try to get done. But from a campus landscape, to be able to communicate with professors is huge in our landscape today. Our faculty does a phenomenal job. When we have issues, they directly let me know. And that's a big part of what we do. When you're talking about 50,000 plus students being on the campus, and I get an email, probably 6 to 7 emails, a day from faculty members that say, hey, Brad, you may want to be on alert. This student athlete's not doing this. And I can communicate back to our staff, back to our coaches to say, hey, how do we get this taken care of so that we're all successful? So it's a family approach, and I say it, wholeheartedly that I thank everyone for being involved, because I can't do this job. I can't get the sleep that I need and the rest that I need without all the partners that we have that help us get things done.
What's the old saying, Brad? It takes a village?
It takes a village to get it done.
Again, we're talking to Brad Horton, He's the Senior Associate Athletic Director, Academics and Student Athlete Development. We're talking academics along with athletics here at Georgia State, but focusing in on athletics and academics and how the two work in tandem with one another. The COVID year really kind of obviously threw everyone for a loop. How did it affect, because players got that COVID year, so guys that might be here 4 years or take 5 years to get a 4-year degree. You got some guys in college now that have seemingly been here 6 and 7.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the COVID year really for us, it allowed a lot of student athletes to come back and further their education. I mean, we have a kid on the football team, Jalen Jones, that's going to graduate this fall with a master's degree. And who would have thought 5 or 6 years from now he would be graduating from the university with a master's degree and being honored the way he has on the football field and off the football field. And there's many more stories, from that side. So it allowed us to be able to extend student athletes, in their education, but also allow our coaches to mentor, these student athletes to transition to career after sports. And that's been a big push, for all of us is now, we're transitioning and we're putting resources together to say, hey, how do we also help these student athletes that, leave with 4.0 GPAs with 2 degrees to a career that they're going to be balanced and be able to be supportive, as they start their families and they continue their families, as they move forward in life.
You talked about the support you get across campus, and you mentioned coaches as well, but it's at the end of the day, and you do have that here at Georgia State, literally across the board, but to have that overwhelming support from each of the individual coaches certainly makes it a lot smoother operation, to do what you do.
Yeah, I think it's, at the forefront, our coaches are, they bring these student athletes to campus and they're invested in their futures. And that's a huge part of the success of our athletics department. I can't tell you the amazing stories that we have for all of our coaches. Everyone involved. I mean, from the time that we sit down and say, hey, coach, this kid needs help, in this area, this kid does not need help in that area, and them pushing, those student athletes to be, better than what they are. I mean, we have, weekly meetings with some of our coaches, monthly, bi-weekly, whatever it is, and these Panther family meetings that our sport administrators are involved with our coaches to go through academics, to go to career after sports, to go through, everything that a student athlete, can go through from, mental health awareness, nutrition, all these different conversations, and our coaches push our student athletes to be, successful, and that's a huge part, of our success at the athletic department. I can't, talk, about every story because it'll take all day, but I mean, our coaches are the backbone of our program, and I appreciate everything they do for us.
And Brad, let's be honest, we're talking about Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia, of which I'm an alum as well, but it's a Research 1. We're not talking junior college, community college. We're talking a Research 1 in the 8th largest market in the country. And not that it should be, but Georgia State can be a challenging place academically.
Yeah, I agree. From the time that, I've had a chance to talk to Dr. Brian Blake, and us being a Research 1 institution, our research that is out there, if you look at how much funding we have from that source and what our programs are based on, if you go through every one of our colleges, and you look at our honors college and you look at the students that come through our university, it's an amazing university. I mean, a degree from Georgia State is really, one of the best that you can have. So I tell our student athletes that in the recruiting process, we go through that with our coaches and we go through that with everyone that's involved. But it really is an amazing university to see from 10 years, when I started here, from an athletic standpoint, from a university standpoint, to see how much growth we've had. It's amazing. And I can't tell you, the accomplishments that we've had, but, where we are as a university now from 10 years ago is amazing. I can only look forward to the future, that we have.
And the last thing I wanted to ask you about, and we're going to talk to some student athletes or a student athlete on the second segment of our Panther Insider podcast, Driven by Ford, as we focus in on academics here within athletics at Georgia State. And you mentioned this right at the beginning of this interview, and that was life after college. And at Georgia State, it's college to career. And so what we're talking about here in your area is not just, hey, what did you get on that test last week? And, did you show up to class and did you show up to study hall? You're basically with these student athletes from the time they get to Georgia State to, in many instances, helping them get to that next level once they're ready to leave Georgia State.
Yeah, I agree. One of those things that, when I look back on my success as a student athlete, the one thing that I, scratched my head on is when I left the university with, the degree. Once I, was done playing football, I came back and said, hey, what's next for me? And no one really had that answer. And I went and sat down with our athletic director, and I said, hey, I want to get into athletics administration. And he walked me around and did some different things that really helped, my experience. And that's why I'm so passionate about this part of it, because it's not invested only in athletics, but it's invested in our university, from Dr. Brian Blake and some of those, members that are involved. But when you talk about college to career, you really have to know and be passionate for the student athlete. It's to sit down one-on-one and say, okay, do you have a resume? Do you have a cover letter? Do you have a LinkedIn account? Do you have elevator speech? Have you ever did a mock interview? So some of those things that we're aligning for our student athletes, prepare them for, next phase of life. And that's a huge part of it. And we're on the forefront of that right now. We're doing mock interviews next Monday, for our student athletes on the 17th. And it's going to be an interesting conversation for a lot of those student athletes, because they haven't had a chance to do that piece of it. And that's what prepares them for, the life after sports. And again, we're putting every investment into our student athletes to say, okay, when you graduate from this university, if you have a chance to play professional sports, awesome. But what's also that alternative plan outside of professional sports? If you want to get into the stock market, if you want to get into banking, if you want to get into business, if you want to be an entrepreneur, what are some of those things that we can do to help you, be successful in those fields?
Well, Brad, appreciate everything you and your staff are doing. It shows that Georgia State's sitting on top of the Sun Belt Conference. Again, a athletic department average GPA of 3.34. And as I said, nearly 200 Georgia State student athletes across 14 sports earning academic honors. And I did want to mention another 73 student athletes that are on the Sun Belt Conference academic honor roll, which means you have a GPA of 3.0 to 3.49. So congrats on all of those numbers. They're fantastic. And again, appreciate everything you're doing for every student athlete here at Georgia State.
All right. Thank you, Dave. And go Panthers as well.
All right, that's the first segment of our Panther Insider podcast as we delve into academics within athletics here at Georgia State. And again, we want to thank Senior Associate Athletic Director for Academics and Student Athlete Development, Brad Horton, for kind of laying things out about how things are done, what the process is here at Georgia State. Now we're going to talk on the other side of this break to a couple of our student athletes and see how they approach the academic challenge of being a student athlete here at Georgia State. And we'll talk to them coming up shortly. Right now, we're going to pause for these words from Ford and Center Park Credit Union. We move to the defensive side of the football following these words from Ford and Center Park Credit Union.
Even before the victory celebration is over, great teams are back at it the next day, working to get even better. The team at Ford understands how hard work and dedication pay off. Over the last 30 years, Ford Explorer has been America's best-selling SUV. In fact, all Ford SUVs, like Explorer, Escape, and Edge, are built for victory. Score a great offer today at your local Ford dealer. Based on total cumulative OEM reported U.S. sales for all SUVs from calendar year 1990 through calendar year 2019.
Center Park Credit Union, the official financial sponsor of GSU football, is proud to be a part of the Georgia State community and the Panther Athletics program. Center Park provides members convenient financial services. In addition to online banking, mobile banking, and 7 Metro Atlanta branches, Center Park members have access to 5,000 co-op shared branches and 75,000 surcharge-free ATMs nationwide. To find a location near you, visit online at centerpark.org/contact, and that's park with a C. Not a member? Join today at centerpark.org. At Center Park, we help our members flourish. And we're back on the Panther Insider podcast driven by Ford. This week, again, we're talking to a couple of student athletes about the world of being a student athlete and what it takes to be successful on the court or on the field as well as in the classroom. And we've already talked to Brad Horton, who heads up the academic effort here at Georgia State. He's the Senior Associate AD, Academics and Student Athlete Development. And right now I'm going to welcome to the microphones as we delve into the student athlete side of things, Seth Glausier from football. He's a long snapper, and Mikyla Tolivert from women's basketball. And welcome to both of you. And I'll throw the question out there. Is time management the biggest challenge that a student athlete at Georgia State faces with what you deal with regarding practice and games and travel, and then also having to keep up things from an academic side? And I'll start with you, Mikyla.
I feel like time management is honestly the biggest aspect of being a student athlete. You have to learn how to balance classes along with we have a 4-hour practice block, 5 if we add in weights into it, and then basically study hall and making time to do homework and study, and then having to go to bed and repeat the same thing the next day. So time management is definitely a big component of our lives.
And Seth, you know as well as I do, basically in-season practice every morning from 9 a.m. till about noon. But it starts at 9, but you got to be there even earlier. And again, I know you're thinking about that. And same thing with Mikyla with women's basketball practice. But you're also thinking about what you got to do post-practice. Got to get lunch, then you got to go to class, and you got to leave time for study hall, so on and so forth.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think time management is a huge part of being a student athlete as well as discipline. You know, I mean, you go to class, you wake up, you go to practice, you work really hard. You got to find time to do everything you need to do. You got to get your work done. You got to get good grades. You got to study. I think being disciplined is a huge aspect of that, like forcing yourself to – I mean, it's so easy to just go and sit over the side and relax and do whatever, but it takes discipline to get up and do your homework, study, and try to make good grades.
I would imagine that, and never having been a student athlete at the collegiate level, this all starts in high school, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It's honestly all in the preparation. Like, if you play in sports in high school, it's not as time-consuming as college sports, but it's about the same thing. Like, you got to balance multiple classes, homework, tests, making sure your grades up. You got to make sure you're eligible for the season. Like, it's just a lot. And being a student athlete, you just have to make sure you stand prioritizing, honestly. Like, that's just the biggest part about it.
Give Georgia State fans, Mikyla, since women's basketball is in preseason practice and the regular season is right around the corner, what's a typical day like for you at this point?
Well, as of now, I'm actually interning as a student assistant in the mornings before my classes. So I actually start my day at 6:30-ish. I wake up, I work for a couple of hours. I have classes from 9:30 to 10:45, go to treatments at 11. We have weights usually at 12, and practice block from 1 to 4. After that, homework, get a meal in, just trying to get our bodies back together. Treatment after practice as well, too, because, like, you have to recover. You have to go through treatments to get your body back to 100% or back to full capacity where you can perform. So it's a long day. We get home around 6, 7, and around that time it's time to eat dinner and start over.
So very little time to catch up on your TV watching, I would assume. What is your major?
Criminal justice.
And Seth, your major, and what is your typical day like? Because I know, again, practice starts at 9, but you guys are here well before that. And I will also let listeners know you're currently injured, so you're walking around on crutches. But under normal circumstances, a typical day for you is what?
So we have weigh-ins around 7:15, 7:30. So, I mean, just wake up 6:30, get right, get here, get a weigh-in, get a meal in, go. We got meetings, treatment, whatever, and then we have a team meeting. After team meetings, we have more meetings. And then after those, I have more treatment now because of my knee. And then after that, we're on the field at around 9:30, off the field around 12-ish, get a meal in, and then just hurry up to class because a lot of our classes are right after practice, so around 12:30, 12:45. Class till about 3 to 4, and then come back, get more treatment in, get a dinner while you're here, and just go back home and then work on schoolwork.
So you spend a lot of time at the stadium where we're recording this, and you spend a lot of time, or you're about to spend a lot of time at the new GSU Convocation Center. So she is from Melbourne, Florida. Where are you from? A little bit about your background in high school.
I'm from Jefferson, Georgia. It's a small town by Athens in North Georgia.
Same question I asked to Mikyla. Talk about your high school. In other words, you came to Georgia State. It's a transition to being a high school student and a high school student athlete, to then and not living at home and being on your own, which encompasses a lot of self-discipline, I would imagine. What was that transition like for you, Seth? And I'll ask that of Mikyla here in a moment.
It took a little bit of adjusting too, but I have just a great support system at home. They forced me, like, you're going to have to be mature, you have to take care of yourself. So they brought me into while I was still at home in high school. But yeah, I mean, my high school, we had very high standards for our football team. So we were really good at athletics. We'd get there, I'd say probably about 7 in the morning, do lifts, meetings, walkthroughs, go through your normal school day, and then right after school, head over to practice, then practice till about 7, get home, eat dinner, and catch up on school. It's long days.
It is a long day. Same question, excuse me, for you with regards to that, new sense of self-discipline as you go from high school to being here and away from your family. I
think it's more so not being able to, lean on my family as much because, I'm not from just down the street. My family, it's a drive. It's like an 8-hour drive. So, yeah, it's just like not being able to call my mom for certain things. Like, I can't be in 2 places at once because I know I don't have her up here right now. My basketball practices they took up a lot of time in high school as well, so I kind of got to adjust, but it wasn't that big of a adjustment for me. I was always responsible. I'm the oldest sibling on my mom's side and the only girl, so that kind of comes with a lot of responsibility, but it was just more so making sure I stayed on top of things and knowing you can't call mom for everything right now. You got to learn how to do stuff on your own too, so it's just that.
Part of the maturation process and the process of growing up to be living on your own and making your own decisions and being where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there.
Yeah, you just gotta make sure, honestly, again, it just comes back to self-discipline. We're growing up, we're becoming adults, and people expect more out of you. The expectation bar, it rises because you're an adult now. You should know right from wrong. If you have to be at a meeting at this time, you gotta be there. If you have to be to class at this time, you gotta be there at this time. No excuses, honestly, being a student athlete.
Seth, what have you found to be the biggest challenge other than being injured right now, but from an academic standpoint?
I mean, it's just always making that time because, like I said, it does take discipline to not go slack off and chill out and not take it as seriously. I think right now it's just I see the light at the end of the tunnel being a senior. Challenges come with I have one more semester left. I'm good. But, just that self-discipline to keep pushing, striving farther, and just trying to make the best grades as possible and just doing the very best of your ability.
By the way, congratulations. On the list of finalists for the annual William V. Campbell Trophy, which goes in football to one of the top academic student athletes. What a great honor. Whether you win or whether you get the award or you don't, still a fantastic honor to be listed among all of those names.
Oh, yes, I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's good.
But what does that – it validates, I guess, everything that you have gone through here in your time at Georgia State as a student athlete. Whether you get the award or you don't, it still validates the process.
Yeah, I would say it's a really big pat on the back. Sometimes you're is this hard work really worth it? I'm sure it goes to everyone's heads, but it's a reason. It's what you're doing is worth it. And but like I said, it's just I just do my best. It doesn't matter if I get 100 awards or 0. I'm just going to do my very best and whatever that is.
This is a pretty easy question. How difficult has it been since you got injured very early in the season? Because you still got to do the academic part of things. As you said, you're a senior, so it's not like you can pull over to the side of the road and chill out for a little while. You still now your treatments are a little different because you're trying to get that knee back to being 100% healthy.
Yeah, it's been a challenge mentally, but I trust in the Lord's plan. I'm not going to question what I know is not the best for me. So, I'm just writing it out, doing the best I can to recover, doing any treatment I can. I'm just going to work hard, and I'm going to come back better than ever. There's a reason why this happened, and I don't see it right now, but I will in the future.
Mikyla, tell me a little bit about practice for women's basketball to this point. Most of the practices, I believe, are in the new Convocation Center. You're in your second year at Georgia State, so you've lived the sports arena life, as a lot of us have, but now you're getting to be a big part of the transition into the new building. How has practice been going for you and your teammates under Coach Hill and the staff?
It's been nice. We actually just got the chance to actually finally see it. We got to visit it over the summer, but it wasn't 100% complete. We finally got the chance to walk through the locker rooms, walk through the gym with the court on the floor, all the TVs up, the lights in. It's very exciting, to know we have a new beginning. We get to start over. So honestly, it's just exciting knowing we have a new home. We got to make it our home now. Practices have been good. We're getting used to the rims, used to the new court, used to the new building. It's amazing. The Convocation Center, it's beautiful in there.
Just out of curiosity, the next question for both of you, what was it about Georgia State that attracted you to want to come be a student athlete in the middle of downtown Atlanta, one of the top 10 cities in the country?
The biggest influence for me, obviously, I came to college during COVID. I graduated with the 2021 class. So my biggest thing was honestly being close enough to home. But a lot of my family is from Georgia. So honestly, just being around close enough to my family to where if I can't reach my mom, I know somebody else will be available to come help me or come get me if something was to happen. I like the city. It's a lot of things to do. But honestly, that COVID, it was just like, you got to go here. Your family, they're close enough. And I took an unofficial visit November, like a few weekends before I committed. And the team, like, it was a sisterhood. Like, everybody gets along. Everybody was cool. They made me feel at home. So that's what made me choose Georgia State.
Same question for you, Seth. And I've kidded over the years, kind of like in all the years we've had football, kickers and long snappers, they tend to kind of have their own core little group, even going back to that first year. In other words, she mentioned a sisterhood. There's at least from where I look, a special brotherhood amongst the kickers and the holder and the long snapper. But what was it about Georgia State and coming to downtown Atlanta that made you make the decision to want to come here?
Truthfully, I like that it was close to home. I live about an hour and a few minutes away. So, I mean, I'm close to home, close to my family if I need them. And I knew that this was a place where I had the ability to come in and play as a true freshman. I was confident in myself, and it paid off, and I did, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my time here. But, yeah, I mean, the specialists, we are a fun group of guys. It's like I love all my teammates. We're a big team. We're a big family. And then, like, it's like your favorite cousins hanging out with them. We're a great group of guys, and I love my group.
All right, so let me ask you. Let's talk about lastly your academics. Tell Panther fans about what you're studying. You said you're a criminal justice. What are the classes like for you, and what do you want to do in a couple 3 years when your Georgia State academic - athletic career transitions to whatever is next?
I'm actually pursuing to be a lawyer. So once I graduate, I want to be a lawyer. I'm actually graduating a year early. My senior year, I didn't have to go to high school. I did dual enrollment, so I got the chance to have a little wiggle room. I'll have an extra year eligibility after that, so I may not get a chance to jump right into law school. So, yeah, but I'm pursuing to be a lawyer. After my eligibility runs out, I would like to go to law school for 3 years, do my 3 years, and then after that, just get a good job. If I have to shadow somebody for a little while, I have to do that, but I plan to be a great lawyer. So,
all right, we'll be on the lookout for Mikyla in the world of being an attorney. Seth, you mentioned you're a senior, so you're a little bit closer than Mikyla is to completing your athletic academic career at Georgia State. What's on the horizon for you?
So I'm majoring in managerial sciences, and I really want to go into medical sales going forward. I've been interning with a good medical sales company in Gainesville, Georgia, where I want to work after I graduate. And I have a great mentor up there, and I go into the hospital with him, work with him, and it's a career that I really want to pursue, and I'm looking forward to pursuing.
Well, congrats to both of you, soon-to-be graduates, and best of luck in your careers, and great job in your student athletic careers here at Georgia State, and appreciate you joining me on the podcast this week.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
I want to thank our two student-athlete special guests this week, Mikyla Tolivert from women's basketball, Seth Glausier from football. Also want to thank Brad Horton, Senior Associate AD Academics and Student-Athlete Development, joining us in the opening segment of the Panther Insider podcast. Again, as a reminder to Georgia State fans, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast each week. We'll be back again soon, and we'll have another very special Georgia State guest for the next episode of the Panther Insider podcast driven by Ford. So for our guests today, Brad, Mikyla, and Seth, Dave Cohen saying thanks for listening, and until next time, go Panthers!